worries. My name is Sarah Talbot. I lead emerging tech at Swindon Borough Council. So we're talking about RPA today and a particular implementation that we've done recently, but also emerging tech. We've been doing work with machine learning, sentiment analysis, traffic adaptive lighting, and more.
Excellent. So I'm now able to share my screen, which I shall do now. And here we are. Wonderful. And you're going to be looking at free school meals eligibility today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Right, shall we practice the next slide just to make sure I've got it within my capabilities?
Okay, next slide, please, which has my contact details should anybody want to contact me afterwards. And if we move on, thanks. So in terms of Swindon and the emerging tech team, what we do is we operate on a proof of concept basis. So we look at fail or win fast demonstrations of solving business problems using new or emerging technologies. We're looking at those that have practical potential capabilities around increased efficiency and or bring about positive additional service impacts through to citizens. And that have extensibility across the business and organisation. So we purposely look at intended small and not necessarily completed solutions, and that allows us to trial and evidence before we allocate any significant investment or resources. So we prove whether something's worth doing or not further. So the POCs aren't designed to return investment, but we do really track progress and evidence against key measures and demonstrate whether we could achieve ROI and benefit opportunities. So one of the pieces that we wanted to look at was RPA, and if successful, that would enable a suite of current manual processes to be digitised for the first time without being cost prohibitive or time consuming integrations. And yes, our use case is free school meals and the eligibility process. And the reason that we selected this one is it interacted between an on-premise system, a non-Swindon system, so the Department for Education, cloud, and also an exceptions management piece where we needed human intelligence. So if we could move on, please, Nick. So this is a very high-level picture of the former process that we had. So a parent, carer, or school would apply through an e-form, and that was received as an email to our business support team, and they would log on the Department for Education portal, carry out an eligibility check by entering a number of details, and then they recorded the results of the check in the line of business system, which in this case is Capital One, and then the outcome letter is shared with parent carers, and the schools are updated of the children that are eligible for the free school meals. So the process was very rule-based, and it had a number of pain points for the business. So we had a high level of low-value manual data entry across 3 different systems. And the other thing with free school meals eligibility, and seen even more so through the pandemic, is that there are significant peaks, usually a demand at the start of each academic year. And that was quite hard to resource against because that did fluctuate significantly. And those factors for us made it well placed in terms of a technical proof of concept, but also one that would deliver really good business value. So Nick, if we can do next slide, thank you very much. We've got this going down to an art. So in terms of automating the process, RPA was used in combination with Exchange Web Services and an email reader that we developed, SQL database, and an Access database front end for the exceptions management. So our little superbot there, now called Munchie. So Munchie, the preschool meals robot, performs the same task that our business support colleagues did beforehand, same system, same rules. The benefits kind of mentioned a little bit earlier is Superbot can run 24/7 and they can easily manage that increase in demand, don't need days off, and make 0 mistakes. And with the help of the bot, our business support colleagues through the pandemic and moving forwards now only need to troubleshoot the occasional exceptions which need to involve some form of value judgment. So, you know, an example would be that the parent carer sends through the application and they've made a mistake, for example, with the national insurance number. Munchie puts that aside and alerts a human that they need to make a phone call and step in. But once that's done, Munchie will pick the work back up again. So these things that, you know, still need that person involvement, and they're beyond the capability of the bot. But the business support team's time has been freed up for really more valuable tasks during COVID, and they've supported food parcel and medicine deliveries to those in need, along with helping process business grants. So one of the discussion points earlier was around, you know, whether we were, for example, looking to remove individuals by using RPA. And in Swindon, that absolutely has not been the case. It's about ensuring that we use them in the best value areas where they're needed most, and or upskilling. But, you know, letting the bot take care of that mundane work that requires high level of accuracy. So if we move on, you can take a look at the digital storyboard of the work as now is. So what we now have is the parent carer school applying online. We use Jardoo as our CRM system at Swindon for the e-forms. The application goes through on email as beforehand, but like I say, we have that email reader that interprets that and puts it into a structured SQL database. Munchie is watching that and identifies when a new application comes in or that an exception has been resolved, and goes off to the Department for Education, enters all the information needed for the eligibility check, and rechecks if needed. Because universal credits can take up to 6 weeks, our business support team were going into the portal daily and entering the same information daily for up to 6 weeks. So, you know, our bot can do that quite happily. Perform a number of validation checks, goes into Capital One, creates the new application, generates the letter, informs the school. Anything that doesn't match up or our bot can't manage goes into our little exceptions database, and our business support team manage the exceptions, work them through, mark them as resolved, and at the point of being marked, bot takes over again and continues the rest of the process. And then we also have kind of managers and analysts that sit on the side looking at the processing trends and the data. So if we move on, we're all familiar with this line. So, you know, testing and developing new technology always brings some unexpected challenges. But in this particular instance, we found ourselves delivering in the midst of a global pandemic, and that was the biggest surprise. So if we think back to kind of late March, early April, the whole country was in lockdown. Measures included all but essential travel being banned, exercise outside limited to once a day, and wow, didn't we make most of that. Schools were closed to most children, resulting in us needing to work with the schools, the local authority, to identify ways in which we could continue to deliver free school meals to some of our most vulnerable families. From a project perspective, in terms of our RPA proof of concept, a large proportion of the work had been done immediately prior to that period, but actually we were still in the tail end of development leading up into lockdown. But as a team, we needed to adapt really quickly because we hadn't anticipated that the work would end up actually at the forefront of some of our COVID response. So if we can go on to the next slide. What we noticed is as the pandemic emerged and all these lockdown 1.0 started to happen, we were completing data analysis on our development work and identified all of a sudden there was around a 2,000% increase in the numbers of applications for free school meals compared with the same period in the previous year. So what we wanted to do was, as a result, kind of go from our pure technical focus around proof of concept and look at how we could support the service and the authority and the vulnerable families in the best way, and manage a huge increase in demand, because our business support team absolutely would not, that would deluge them. So we noticed through some quick analysis that 20% of applications were for existing claimants, even though it was unnecessary. So we, it was imperative that we liaised with colleagues and addressed the misconception around needing to reapply as school vouchers were introduced as an alternative, and ensured that kind of in this rapidly evolving situation, in lockdown, pandemic, lots of unknowns, that families were receiving accurate, up-to-date information through our website, through the schools and other channels and comms. So kind of, although that was beyond the scope of the project, obviously the families come first. We use networks, connection skills to facilitate and coordinate across different services. And within a couple of hours, we had seen some trends around why those reapplications were coming through, did communications, additional information on the website, contacted our education contacts, and also spoke to our head of service and COO, and looked at putting in place emergency food parcels being deployed for vulnerable families, for those not yet in receipt of the school food vouchers. As we all know, in local authorities at that time in lockdown 1, as the food vouchers were introduced, there were some problems there in making them accessible to everyone very, very quickly. So that helped address the 20%, but we also accelerated our remaining development. We extended the scope of the project from a proof of concept into a pragmatic production, with minimal additional work in order to alleviate that operational pressure at the earliest opportunity. And that in turn ensures that the applications were processed really quickly, and both schools and families were notified of the outcome without delay. So our outstanding work went from 2 weeks to 2 quite long days, and we were live very, very quickly, which was incredible, but tiring. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So accelerating the delivery involved looking at flexing the team roles, innovative solutions, and our kind of, we work agile anyway, but going through to rapid development and iterative cycles. So within days of the lockdown, we went live with our pragmatic production, which automated the process end to end for the first time. So, not just part of it, but from the point of application through to the point of notification for receipt. And critical to that was kind of taking a combination of an agile and lean approach to the development and being really flexible. So the agile approach throughout the work enabled us to test and complete simultaneously, so that shortens our delivery timescales. The huge operational pressures meant, as a project team, we couldn't ask our business support colleagues at a time of a 2,000% increase to undertake the testing. So we quickly learned absolutely everything about their jobs and their roles in this particular area, so that we could support carrying out all the user acceptance testing and testing scenarios very quickly over that couple of days for the robot, and push them through without the need to place any demand on a resource that was processing live applications at the time. And then in terms of the lean aspect, we focused on developing, testing and delivering absolutely only what was needed. And that included having really clear and efficient testing strategies to confirm accuracy and performance of the robot, so we could really move at pace and with velocity. So in terms of end results and what we achieved, if we could move on to the next slide. Thank you, Nick. So here's Superbot Munchie again. So we achieved a 98.3% efficiency compared to the process previously. So our little bot can process the majority of applications end to end without human intervention. Even with the spikes in demand, the exceptions which do need human input are now managed in 9.6 hours per month. Like I say, with a POC, it's really important to us that we evidence and measure everything so we can demonstrate the potential of value for the business. So we had all our measures and baseline data ready and available and went against that. So 9.6 hours for exceptions management compared to 578 hours per month using the manual process. So that's our 98% efficiency increase. We did process redesign as part of that. So the data capture in the initial e-form helped reduce the number of exceptions as well. We streamlined that and put some additional rules in there. But critically, the benefits of the automated process are that the families and schools are updated as to the status of eligibility, 66% faster now in terms of being informed. The business support team's time has been freed up so that they can focus on the exceptions where, the value of the detailed understanding and interaction with schools and parents, carers can occur, but also that they can support a number of other services and help those continue to keep running through a particularly challenging year. This team don't just look at free school meals, they're also doing a number of other tasks. And we have further improvements around maintaining the security of vulnerable children's data because we're having less people having eyes on visibility of that. So if we move on to the next one. So in November, Munchie the little bot became quite famous. And we won the Changing Lives Award, and the project was recognised not only for the technical and business achievements, but the model and approach that we operate under as a team, and the way that we work with NDL as well. And it was a true collaboration. It was a real partnership piece of work, and one that we're really proud of, but everybody knows Munchie. And in terms of lessons and what we learned, if Nick, we can move on again, thank you. So we've gained a huge amount of technical knowledge about developing, using and scaling with RPA. We always cover within our work extensibility opportunities. And we've also learned about the free school meals process. So when I talk about extensibility, it's looking technically at how else and where else we can apply the RPA technology. We identified before free school meals further opportunities for RPA, and around there were some mentions earlier as an alternative to a traditional integration, particularly with legacy systems, and that's actually the second piece that we've worked on, which is now delivered. And that's for our children's services, and it's integrating data between Capital One and Care Director, so two children's systems, one for social care and one for general children's. This was delivered at less than 5% of the supplier quote. I won't say who the supplier is. And we did it in 10 days rather than the quoted 12 months to achieve the work through an integration. Since the Free School Meals project closed, we've learned that we're the first local authority to fully automate free school meals eligibility end-to-end. People, I think, have done elements of it, but yeah, that's great, and it's great that we can share that with our other LAs, and we're very happy and open to share all of our work. As LAs, we all have the same constraints in various ways, and we're all looking for the same business problems and ways to improve them. So our work forms part of a wider conversation now about free school meals. So we've been contacted by central government, Guy St Thomas Hospital and School Food Matters, looking at opportunities where children eligible could be proactively identified, removing the need for parent carers or schools to apply. So we continue the conversation around that, and that's really, really positive. And we continue looking at the NDL SX tools, wide-ranging capabilities, not, like I say, not only within the traditional RPA space, we've now used that for integration. Next in our site is around a mass document migration. So, but we've identified lots and lots of extensibility. And so following the proof of concept and the rapid move through to the kind of pragmatic productionization and our subsequent second piece, we now have a team at the council, or two teams working together. So emerging tech, like I say, is focused on brand new technologies, and we have a wide breadth of areas that we look at. So this is now with our digital team to extend further, and they have support from our IT applications team, and that allows my team to do lots of other interesting stuff. So any questions?
Sorry, right, yes, I'm back. So, right, yes, so any questions? Could you, oh, Greg, do you want to put your camera on and say hello and ask your question? Or
well, I'll get the camera on then.
There you go.
That's very interesting, Sarah. The question is the additional funding that the government made available for school meals outside of term time, was that easy to implement, or how did you handle that additional funding that was made available?
You talking about the food, school food vouchers?
Yes.
So that's managed separately. So, I head up the emerging tech side rather than the business side. But what I do know through our work is that food school vouchers were introduced by government, and there was a particular provider that was responsible for a number of local authorities, and there were some difficulties in being able to get those vouchers available to families quickly. And like I say, we just help with some of those conversations, but I'm afraid I don't know all the details around the free school meals piece itself.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it could have been incorporated in this piece of technology for changes like that.
It didn't. So it kind of didn't make a difference, because this is all about, is the child eligible? So this is confirming, regardless of the mechanism as to whether they receive a food parcel or whether it's vouchers or whether it's going to the school environment and receiving free school meals. This takes the eligibility process and says, yes, they are eligible regardless of kind of what that end delivery is. So it takes the parent carer school saying, is this child eligible, going through all the necessary checks and then saying, yes, you're eligible for receipt of. But the receipt of would be managed by the schools directly and or areas of the authority.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, so sorry, just before anyone else has a question, do you want to just elaborate on that sort of potential now that it's, you've handed it over to DWP, and how potentially how that could evolve?
So we have, like I say, been contacted by central government, Guy St Thomas and Food School Matters, around because it's now fully automated, whether we could change, and it's something I'm hugely passionate about, to take the need away from people having to apply in the first place, and just from the DWP automatically be informed of those children that are eligible. We were talking, Nick, previously about a number of factors. There are some people that maybe don't have access to IT, or have difficulties in being able to use that easily. They also may have, some feelings of stigma around application. So, if we can change the whole concept model around, whereby, we know whether someone's in receipt of benefits, DWP know that. So if they can give us that proactive list and we just then take that and process it through, it will cut down the speed, and it takes away some of the barriers at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, potentially there's no form to fill in that part of